Now by Michael Bociurkiw, a global affairs analyst and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Michael has been based in Ukraine on and off over the past year and just returned from Odessa on Sunday. You and I spoke almost, just less than a year or so when this was started in Ukraine. So it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Give us a sense, and our viewers a sense, Michael, what the situation is like in Ukraine, not just in Odessa, but in Ukraine, because you've been in and out several times now.
Well, obviously, people like Ben have been doing a great job of portraying what's actually going on the front lines. But, you know, spending time in Odessa, I really get a good sense of what's going on underneath the surface. And I mean, small, medium-sized businesses, ordinary families are really, really struggling because a lot of the hours of the day, there's simply no power. So, for example, restaurant owners are having to try and figure out, do I buy a generator for $10,000 or do I hope that people come in to use my restaurant? It's very tough decisions being made. And then the darkness from the power outages is really kind of dampening the mood of people. And as you mentioned, I just came out of Odessa. Tens of thousands of Ukrainians on the move, mostly mothers and their children, because they're either leaving Ukraine because it's not safe, or they're coming back because they can't afford living in places like London. They long for their families and for their homes. So a lot going on beneath the surface that we see every day, and pretty sad. Actually.
And the situation has been relentless. You mentioned power outages. We saw that in the last few months. And we've also seen just relentless and inhumane attacks that have increased, I think is fair to say, by Moscow in the last few months. I mean, perhaps we shouldn't be surprised given what we saw in Syria, but what do you make of the frequency now, Michael, of these attacks?
It's horrible. I think the gloves are off. There are no red lines anymore for the Kremlin. I think after that strike at Dnipro on that residential complex, gives us an idea of what lies ahead. If they're willing to strike that type of residential complex with a missile that is designed to sink aircraft carriers, I mean, what other red lines are there? So I think that'll lead to another topic of our conversation, I'm sure, about tanks and, you know, offensive capability. But a lot of Ukrainians are concerned that there are going to be more strikes like that.
And on that, before we talk tanks, I mean, we're looking at really the Dnipro attack in the apartment block there. How much anxiety has that caused? Not just these attacks, but also the talk of this Russian offensive in the spring. How anxious are Ukrainians right now?
Well, you know, a lot of analysts, including Ukrainian ones, are predicting this. You're hearing this more from government officials that the Russians are gearing up for a major offensive. Reputable bodies talking about another attempt to take Kyiv, another attack from the south, Odessa, where I'm temporarily based, and other places as well that haven't been that much affected. So I think this should be a signal to Western leaders to grow some spine and provide Ukraine with what it needs, because otherwise that window of opportunity is closing very quickly for Ukraine to be able to defend itself.
And this debacle over the tanks, of the Leopard 2 tanks, how is that being seen in Ukraine? What's the mood like there regarding this? Because there clearly there's division over, should we send? I'm thinking Poland here, who wants to send, Germany not sending, at least not now. How's that being played out there?
I think a lot of Ukrainians are asking themselves what's going on, because they did get a lot of what they asked for. But when it comes to the tanks, there seems to be a red line for the West there. But I think even, for example, my own country, Canada, has those Leopard 2 tanks, and somehow it can't, again, grow the spine to get them to Ukraine.
Why do you think that is, though, Michael? Is it internal politics?
There's a bit of internal politics, but then public opinion polls in my country, in Canada, say Canadians support aiding Ukraine, even if it contributes to the deficit. So I would love Prime Minister Trudeau to explain that one to me, but there are other countries as well. I think what's going to happen is, as I said early on in the conflict, that micro-alliances will start to grow. So you'll see the Estonias, the Latvias, the Lithuanias acting unilaterally and providing tanks. But let's remember, you cannot flick the switch and the tanks appear overnight. There's a big logistical effort involved. There's training involved, maintenance change. So that's why Germany has to be involved. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to maintain that supply chain of tanks.
We heard from John Kirby earlier was talking to Cristiano Ronaldo, and she asked him about whether there is a divergence now within NATO alliance, whether there's still unity. Have a listen to what he said.
Sure.
We're not going to ever agree on every single aspect of every decision that the alliance makes. That's what makes the alliance so strong, that friends and allies and partners can have honest discussions with one another. But to say that this is dividing the alliance or somehow putting international security at risk in Ukraine because there's a discussion over tanks is just way overblowing this thing.
So overblown to say, really, there's a division within NATO. And we heard similar things last week when they said NATO has never been as united as this. What do you make? Do you agree with that?
Well, look, the EU and most European countries couldn't get their act together for COVID-19 response, so this doesn't surprise me. But what does concern me is that you have a Mr. Putin in the Kremlin sitting back with his arm folded, snickering probably at these signs of division. What he hopes for is for time to be able to regroup, get these convicts and streetless people, whoever else they've been sending to the battlefield, so that they can regroup and do another attack. And, you know, just quickly, it's important to note that there's a big difference, of course, in mentality when it comes to fighting. The Russians are prepared to send however many human beings it takes into this meat grinder, where the Ukrainians, as we saw in Solidar, when things get way, way too dangerous, they pull back a bit because they care about their own people.
Michael, always great to get your perspective. Great to have you back in London as well.
Likewise.
Thank you.